A dominant force in Colorado politics is leaving his job after a string of defeats. Dudley Brown has been a big reason that Colorado's Republicans have moved to the right, while the rest of the state has moved to the left in recent years. Leading the Rocky Mountain gun owners, Brown backed a series of ultra-conservative Republicans, often willing to lose GOP-held seats if that meant not having to compromise. 9 News politics guide Marshall Zellinger reports on the oversized impact of this unelected political leader.
Does not preclude.
You've seen Dudley Brown on Next many times. You've not seen the new executive director of Rocky Mountain gun owners, Taylor Rhodes.
Our members want less government. Our members want less gun control. We're going to fight for our members every step of the way.
A difficult task in a state with a Democratic governor and Democratic-controlled state House and Senate.
I think our conservative leadership has done a pretty good job down at the Capitol, and I hope we can elect more conservatives like those folks.
RMGO tried last week in the Republican primaries, but in the 4 state House districts colored red, northern Colorado and part of Jefferson County, and in 1 Senate district in northern Colorado, the Republicans who won were the ones RMGO spent money to defeat. You spent considerable money trying to get these candidates to lose. They won. Despite that, and somehow RMGO is claiming victory?
That's an odd way to spin it, Marshall, but yeah, that's what I'm saying. The candidates that we supported may have come up short. Our program won, and if they don't vote pro-gun in the General Assembly, if they are elected in November, then they will be held accountable by Rocky Mountain gun owners.
2 RMGO-supported candidates did win. One is Perry Buck, who was in a primary for Weldon County Commissioner. The other is State Representative Dave Williams, who did not have an opponent in his primary, so in the contested races, they were 1 and 5. Kyle, as you know, we've talked about RMGO a lot in the last 13 months, none of it news that they prefer to hear about. June 2019, it was the $45,000 spent in a failed effort to recall State Representative Tom Sullivan. In March, they lost a lawsuit to try to challenge how the state House passed the red flag legislation. And last month, it was the challenge, the 7-year challenge to try to find unconstitutional the state's large capacity magazine ban, which the state Supreme Court upheld.
So, Marshall, obviously, you know, they raise money, then use that money in support of candidates. Do we get any sense of whether the fact that Rocky Mountain gun owners and Dudley Brown has gotten run out of the gym in game after game after game has dampened people's enthusiasm to give him money?
Not yet, necessarily, and as you heard Taylor Rhodes say, if these candidates they didn't support at least still support pro-gun legislation, it's a victory in their book. One thing would be telling is who will be the leader of the Republicans at the state House. If it changes, perhaps from House Minority Leader Patrick Neville to someone not in line with RMGO, that could be telling.
All right. Another medal-winning report from our Marshall Zellinger. Thank you, Marshall.